All right, get set for 5 tips to make you a better earnings trader. We're talking about earnings reporting season, which we're just coming into conveniently. So here comes 5 tips, guys, to improve your trading around earnings season. Here's what is to come. Number 1, we're going to talk about momentum versus fundamentals. Sometimes it's just about the momentum. Aftermarket releases versus pre-market releases. There's a lot of keys to understand in that point. Price action is absolutely everything when it comes to trading earnings and understanding liquidity. We'll get into that more. And hey, guess what? You're going to have to stick around for number 5 because that's coming up at the end. Let's get right into it, guys. Talking a little bit about momentum versus fundamentals. Fundamentals, one way to look at earnings on a longer term basis, but here we're looking at how you can just capture that instant momentum.
Yeah, 100%. And the other way to think about momentum is like the hype that a stock goes into going into earnings is going to matter. And I'm going to use an example here. I could easily talk about the banks recently and how they had blowout earnings, but I want to use an example I think everyone is going to understand in NVIDIA. We can go back to, of course, the report on the 26th. And look, you can see, I mean, it was a revenue jump 84%, or May the 26th, I should say. So this is in the past. They're going to beat on revenue. They're going to beat on earnings, which NVIDIA always does. But that's not the key thing. Every single metric looks fantastic for them, but they were already, and this is the day that earnings get reported right here. You know, they'd already just made a bounce off a 50-period moving average, moving out of a trading range, or trying to break out of a trading range that they had already been sitting in. You had a multi-day move. They had announced the stock split, of course, which also gave momentum to the stock. You had a multi-day move going into that earnings trade. So this is one of those situations where it got sold off for a couple of days because the momentum had already happened going into earnings. It's not to say you definitely know this is going to be the case, it's going to sell off, but you have to consider that when you're going to be buying into something like that. Don't just blindly read the report. Understand where the stock had come from. It was going into a previous high. It had already run into it off a nice technical leveler, that 50-period breakout that it was doing. The fact that it consolidated here, we talk about that cooling off maybe 2 or 3 day period after earnings. That's exactly what ends up happening. And we'll talk about price action in a little bit, but understand that momentum. There is an often sell move on blowout earnings that you can take advantage of pre and post market, especially if you anticipate the fact that we run up pretty hard going into earnings. So it's not to say you throw the fundamentals out the window, because if you do, you miss out on a gigantic swing trade that we can get into in NVIDIA here. But, you know, in that immediate move, understand that momentum matters. And if it's already been moving up, sometimes they're going to sell that news regardless in the moment, Sean.
So yeah, good one there, momentum versus fundamentals. And it's funny that we choose the same sector here because I'm just going to analyze a little bit of AMD with tip number 2. And we talk about aftermarket releases versus pre-market release. And of course, the very first thing you have to do is understand where your market is and when it's going to be released. So definitely you got to say, okay, AMD is trading over on the NASDAQ. When is it going to be released? Is my broker allowing me to trade? I mean, that's another very, very important aspect. I know that my broker, for example, locks trading till about 8 a.m., I believe, in the morning. And then I think it shuts it off at about 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., obviously in the evening. So you got to understand, I don't do much pre-market trading or post-market for earnings releases, as you can see. So, you know, that's one thing. Understand your broker if you're going to be trading this off earnings. I have a good example here of AMD, and it's just really funny. This goes back to its April 28th of 2021 earnings release, and it was an aftermarket release. So you can see here, AMD during the day, really not doing too much. I mean, we have a bottom here of 85 and then a top of 86.75. So travels about $1.50 throughout the day. Kind of looks like it might be a negative report as we get into the close and we close near the bottoms. Generally speaking, that's going to be a good little look for me that, hey, you know what, maybe it's going to come out bad. But then all of a sudden, AMD releases their numbers right at 4 o'clock. And again, this is a 3-minute chart. I only have it charting till about 6 p.m. Right there. So right on the nose. Look at this move. Just aftermarket move, bang. Why is aftermarket kind of cool? Because you can use levels from the day before as saying, you know what, I want to get long. So maybe on an 87 break here, the high of the day, I'm going to get long, or maybe I'm going to use this level here, 86.65 to get long. Needless to say, AMD rips up here in the aftermarket. Then you come in. I want to notice down here as well, guys, look at the volume. The volume actually picks up here on the release of the notes of the earnings. And then you come into the next day morning. Look, very, very low volumes. Not much happening. The stock remains pretty high. But look when the market actually opens, what happens. It retraces all the way back down. So again, we will talk about price movements, liquidity, momentum, things like that. But this is tip number 2 is understand when your stock is going to release it, pre-market or post-market, because there's a huge opportunity here in AMD after the market is closed and when the release comes out. Then you get the digestion of the report. Traders will start to see hedge funds, major holders will say, hey, where are we here? What was this report? And as you can see, as the market opens, we give absolutely everything back. So if you're aware of this and this move up to basically all-time highs here, $90 again for AMD. It's not all-time highs, but it's close. It's a nice bump. From 85 close up to 90, that might have been a profit-taking area. So if you knew that you were reported aftermarket and you saw this kind of a bump up, then you did have a great opportunity to get out before this ensued the very next day.
All right, and a great example there of our next point. Let's move on. Number 3 is going to be price action is everything, guys. We all know if we're sitting here as human beings, you're not going to be able to digest an entire earnings report and understand exactly what all the numbers mean and figure out which direction it should be going before it already makes that move. So we have to be able to capture that instant momentum. So price action is everything. That was a great example. Up on the report, and then you come in the next day and it comes right back down again. Neil, I know you have more examples of price action.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the one that recently happened. We had Pepsi, of course. Look, they blew out their second quarter earnings as well. They raised guidance. It was just a fantastic quarter for them. But a different story because than Nvidia, it was actually at literally at the all-time high, essentially trying to break. This is about a 150.70 top wick on the daily chart. You're going to see what happened in the last couple of sessions, finally breaking out. But I do want to go into this first morning after that earnings release. It wasn't doing a heck of a lot, just hanging right around just above that all-time high. And if it's on a bullish report like this, I don't think there's too much of a coincidence. This is 150.75. I showed you in that daily chart, it was breaking that 150.70. The second it bounced and could not break, but held that previous top, when it was consolidating above it, gapping higher on solid earnings, it was off to the races. See in the days, the next couple of days past that, there has been no retracement. That's what we call a pure momentum breakout. You had that opportunity off the open where you could have had that long off that price. No question about it. Volume was fantastic in this entire move here, either into that 150.70 or as it broke above and then broke out above the pre-market high. It almost didn't matter which way you took it, but you have to look at that price action. It was at the high, it was breaking out, and that move happens almost instantaneously. You've just got to be looking for it because it's all about that price action. We showed you Nvidia before where the momentum had taken it up and it was already, gapping up into resistance point and shy of that resistance point, so it pulled back for a couple of days first. This is a case where it's at that high, breaks that high, is trading above it in the pre-market after earnings, and then holds that support and then off to the races. It hasn't looked back since. It's only been a couple of days, but a very, very clean trend break there, and that's all about that price action. By 5 pennies, it held that level. Doesn't get any better than that.
No, it does not. And look, we're just going through a few examples, and we handpicked these, but you can see them all the time when earnings season right upon us now. So a good time to review some of this. Look, tip number 4, understanding liquidity. I'm just going to call up here. I just wanted to show you quickly a level 2 of Beyond Meat before I go into this earnings report. Right now it's fine, but the spread, even on the level 1, even in the middle of the day when liquidity is all around us, still 15 cents, right? When, as opposed to if you just call up a stock like a Microsoft or something, 1 cent. And I'm indicating these areas up here. These are the level 1s price levels. So 1 to 2 pennies on Microsoft in the middle of the day. Let's go back to Beyond Meat. And as you can see there, 11 or 12 cents in the middle of the day. Imagine what it looks like on an earnings day, right? And so that's another thing that you have to understand when you're analyzing earnings. And again, these are tips, right? 5 biggest tips to trading earnings. So here we go. If you're going to be looking at Beyond Meat, look what happens when the report comes out. Again, so everything is fine. Look at this one candle to the downside. So again, you have to understand liquidity here with Beyond Meat. So you go from 120 on the close all the way down, and forget about where we are here. That's 109. Like, that's already almost 10% to the downside. But look at this wick that happens. I hope you can see it. Yeah, you can. Good. Look what happens right there. 105. Low there, and if I call up the daily chart here on Beyond Meat at that time, here's a daily back in May. So, I mean, you know, this is like, if you got wicked down to 105 here, this is 120. It doesn't show everything, but like, you didn't get a good price, man, on this on May 5th. So there it is right here. It doesn't show it all the way down, but look where that is. 115 is showing as the bottom, but we did see on that minute chart that it actually does wick all the way down to here. So that actually is a bad liquidity moment there for Beyond Meat. Somebody sold it. They hit their market key and they get sold all the way down there, and then you don't see 105. I mean, imagine hitting that 105 and the very next morning you wake up and you're back to 112. So I think understanding liquidity, this move down to 105 and then right back 2 minutes later. This is a 3-minute chart. I guess it's like 6 minutes later. You get right back to 115. So that's like a $10 move front to back there. That's more than the whole move. Like, even if you got in at 118 at the very close, a bad report comes in. If you hold it to the next morning, even just at 10 o'clock, you're doing 116. So it doesn't seem like it's a horrible move. But liquidity, a big time problem if you are trading earnings. So I think that that's something here that hopefully we just showed you that with Beyond Meat, that you got to be very, very careful which keys you're going to hit. I would avoid hitting market keys if you're trading in the pre or post market with this kind of a spread and with liquidity being a concern. So tip number 4, understand the liquidity in your stock, whether or not it's on open. I mean, even on open, you're on Beyond Meat. Look, 107 all the way up to 114, the first candle right there. So, you know, big movements, understand the liquidity, and understand that you may get that jiggle in the first couple minutes.
Off hours trading going to create a whole bunch of new issues and new concerns that you have to be aware of. Great explanation. We promised a 5th one, guys. Here it comes. And number 5 is going to be how to properly use technicals. Sean, we'll come right back to you. You have a great example.
Yes, I do. As soon as it loads up here, we're going to use UNH reporting today. And then when I look at this kind of a stock, once this loads, you'll get it. But this is what I'm talking about. When you're looking at a name that is basically near or at its all-time highs, like UNH is right now, you got to be very, very weary of the report that's going to come out, because look at this move that it's had from the bottom. So it's June 18th here. Today's date, July 14th. So you have in 1 month, you go from 388 all the way up to 420, where we are today, 416 trading right now, but all the way up to this high and looking to take out this 425. Remember, on a $400 name, it doesn't take much to take these highs out, right? So even on a good report, I just wanted to say that you have to be very, very careful for technicals. I do have another example with AMD as well that I can try to call up here. But if you're near the high, all-time high, just be very, very careful that even though the report is amazing, this run, a lot of this has been baked in. They're sort of expecting that to come through. AMD, quickly, I'll show you one quick move that happened on its report. And I remember this day because I was here trading it in the aftermarket. I love some AMD, but this was an earnings play. Oh, man, I got to zoom this in just a little bit more. AMD touched its all-time highs on earnings right here, $100 back on, I guess it was January of this year. And then basically, if I could zoom in even more on this day, there it is. It takes that high out. So look at this run up. AMD, this is a perfect example, guys. $92 a couple days before, all the way up to 100. The report comes out. It tags basically $99.99 to the T, and then it just drops the next 5 or 6 days. The report was great. The report shot it to $100, and then all of a sudden, it just dripped down the next couple days. So be very, very careful. If the report's coming out and you're near all-time highs, anything could happen, guys.
So there we go, guys. Technicals going to matter when you are trading earnings. There we go. We did it. 5 tips to make you a better earnings trader. Here comes Valeria.
Hey guys, thank you for this helpful information. Dear viewers, please subscribe to this channel to see more great videos.